You are now watching the series Notepad App with Python and Qt. This is episode 4, and we will work on file writing and reading using Python. With that said, let's dive in. We will now create a new file and save it as main.py. This will be the script where we implement features that our app relies on in Python. At the top of the script, we will import the PySide2 modules again. So Qt Core as Qtc, Qt Widgets as QtW, Qt GUI as Qt GUI, and Qt QML as Qt QML. Then we will define a new class called main, and it takes a qtc.queobjects. Inside the class, we will define an engine property. It is equal to none by default. For the initialization method, it takes self and engine as the arguments. Let's first call the super.init, and self.engine should equal to engine. And now we need to add a reference to this Python class to the engine, so that within the QML context we will be able to directly call the functions inside this Python class. To do this, we write engine.rootContext.setContext property. We have to give it a name, so I'll name it manager, and we pass self, which is this class, as the reference. So now we have to define two functions, one for saving or writing to a file, and the other one for loading or reading from a file. Let's first create the save method, and it takes 3 arguments: self, path, and content. Remember in the very first episode, I talked about how the Python side and the QML side communicate with each other. That is by using the Qt slot feature. So before we write the save function, we have to add a qtc.slot statement here. And inside the parentheses, we have to specify the arguments. We don't necessarily have to specify the name, but rather we are specifying the type of each argument. So for the save function, we're taking path and content, and both should be strings. So inside the parentheses of the slot, I'll write string and string, and it corresponds to path and content respectively. Then inside the save function, it is all about Python. Writing some text to a file using Python shouldn't be a difficult task. We just do with open path, and we use the W+ mode. We open the file as file, then file.write the content, and close the file once the content is written. And now let's go ahead and define the second function, which is open. And it takes a path argument. For the slot of this function, it is a bit interesting. This time we're taking one argument only, that is path, for the open function. But for the slot, we still have to define 2 variables for the slot. The first one is the string, and the second one, this time I'll give it a name. That is result equals to string. So you can think of a slot as an external storage. So anything inside can be accessed by both the Python side and the QML side. So in this method, for example, we first pass the path string to the slot from the QML side, and the Python function reads the path and retrieves the text from the file, and then it will send the result back to the results field here in the slot, which the QML side can then read the content of the result. So inside the open function, we write with open path, and this time we're using the R mode. We open it as a file, and this time we have to return a value here. So we type return file.read. So the returned value here will be accessible in the QML context by using the results field in the slot. Let's save the script, and now we have to go to the Bootstrap program. Here we have to define our main class reference. So before loading the QML context, we're going to set manager equals to main, and we have to pass the reference to the QML engine to the class. And don't forget to import the main class from the main.py script. Let's save that. And now we can go to our main.qml context. In the last episode, we have already completed the file handler function, but instead of manager.load, I'll be using manager.open. Let's save that and run the program. Now if we hit open, and let's select a random file, which is the Bootstrap program. And now, when the dialog accepts a file, the text will be written in the text area. Let's open a new file and type some random text inside. If we hit save, let's call this one test.txt and save it. And now you can see in our directory there is a new file called test.txt, and inside is the content that we just written in text area. Let's go ahead and add some more text inside, and we hit save again and replace text.txt, and as you can see, text.txt is now being updated. Let's take a look at the toolbar click handler function. Currently, both the save and save as buttons will call the same function. If the user has already opened a file, however, the save button should be able to directly write to that file without showing the file saving dialog. To do this, let's change the save function to direct save. And below the save function, we will define a new function called direct save. Inside this function, we will check if the current path is blank. If it is blank, then it should show the file dialog again by calling the save method. Otherwise, if a path is already provided, then we can directly call the save function of the manager by feeding the path and text area.text. Now let's run the program again. Currently the path is blank because this is a new file. If we type some content and hit save, it should show the file saving dialog. And now if I open another file, the path is already provided, and let's add some random content and hit save again. And now the content will be saved without showing the file saving dialog. Let's verify this by opening a new file and opening the text again. You see, the new content is saved. So there we have completed file opening and file saving. In the next episode, we will work on the save status and also the unsaved dialog. I'm Yellow Flicker, and I will see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.